Hey guys, it's Shelby. Today I want to talk about some things that I no longer do thanks to sustainability. I might say eco-minimalism, zero waste, whatever word you want to use. I don't do these things because I try to live in a way that is better for the planet. I actually got this video from one of my friends, Immy, from Sustainably Vegan. If you guys don't know who she is, she's one of my best friends, and I'm going to have her video linked below. You should go check it out. As we know, I will ramble too much in the intros and people will complain, so I'm not going to do that. Just want to say thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. I absolutely love them. They are a learning platform with over 30,000 courses to choose from with varying topics. There's definitely something for everyone, and the first 1,000 people to click the link at the top of my description will get a free month to Skillshare's membership. Okay, things I don't do anymore thanks to sustainability. Here we go. First thing I don't do anymore, or if I do, it's in very minimal ways, is follow trends. So when I go to buy clothing, I honestly a lot of times don't even know what's on trend anymore because I don't follow those types of people online. I also don't watch a lot of ads, or I don't see a lot of ads, so I use YouTube Premium. Best $10 I spend every month. I see no fashion ads. I see no models. I don't even know what's in style. So when I shop, I'm shopping for things that I think look good on my body and that I enjoy wearing. And if you ask Madison, my partner, she would tell you I only ever buy things that are white. Case in point. But not following trends is a more sustainable thing to be doing because obviously we're not just buying things because society tells us that we should, and then we get bored of it when it's not in style anymore and it ends up being wasted or just sitting in the back of our closet somewhere. That's not a sustainable habit to keep, and so I try not to follow trends, especially when it comes to like clothing and decor. However, I did decide to part my hair down the middle because Gen Z said that was a cool thing to do. But since me parting my hair has absolutely no impact on the environment, I said, okay, we'll partake in this trend. But you get my drift. I no longer throw all of my waste in the same bin, okay? So this is something that I did for so many years when I lived back home, when I was baby environmentalist Shelby. My parents still do this. Things that aren't recyclable, things that are recyclable, and things that are compostable all go into the same bag. Now I'm hoping most people who are watching this video don't do that, but that is something that I was forced to do when I was younger because I didn't have the resources available to me, and that is something I no longer do, thank goodness. That was like priority number one when I moved out of my parents' house. I no longer think that I can save the planet. You might not know that judging by my career and my YouTube channel, but I don't think that individuals are what are going to change the world, and so I no longer ignore the systemic role that the system and the government and the big businesses play in changing our course of environmental action. People ask me about eco-anxiety a lot, and the reason that I don't suffer from it debilitatingly is because I focus on things that I can control and not on things that I can't. And now that I've realized I don't have control over changing the entire mindset of the planet, I live a little bit, okay, I still have anxiety, but I live a little bit less of an anxious life. Me from several years ago, or even me from like 3 years ago, was incredibly anxious about all the things that needed to be done, and they need to be done now, and I need to do them. I don't do that anymore. I no longer give energy to my fantasy self. Now, I don't think I came up with this topic. I'm sure someone else said it once upon a time, and maybe I even heard it from them. But the idea is that we all have these things that we see other people do, or things about our friends and family that we admire, that we wish we could do, that we enjoyed, and that was like part of what brought us joy. But in reality, it doesn't. So for example, some of the things about my fantasy self is that I love to read, and I also love tea. Real life Shelby does not like those things. I don't like to sit down and read a book, likely because of my neurodivergencies. And I also don't like tea as much as I have tried and tried and tried because I know it's supposed to be great for you, but I don't like it. It tastes like dirty water. Fight me all day. I hate tea.
You know, I always figured that tea was just gonna taste like hot brown water. And you know what? I was right. Yeah, it's horrible. No, thank you.
Different people's fantasy selves show up in so many different ways. For instance, things like yoga. If you really decide that all of a sudden you're into yoga and you buy all these things to try it, right? You buy maybe a membership and you buy clothes and you buy workout equipment and all these things that we end up buying to feed our fantasy self, when in reality it's not something that we're either going to stick to or that actually brings us joy. We just wished it did. And I personally have had that realization over the years, so I don't buy things anymore that suit my fantasy self. Over several years of sustainable living, I have gone from angry, militant environmentalist Shelby to I'm just gonna live my life. I'm gonna do everything I can. I'm going to use the voice that I have to influence change, but I'm not going to shame people for them not already having the same realizations that I have. I guess this is coming with age, man. You know, I'm 28 years old, I'm approaching my 30s, and I think I have a little bit of wisdom. I know I still have a lot more to learn, but I think over the years of being an environmental advocate, I think what I've learned is that shaming people into doing what you personally think is right is never going to be the reason that they do it, and that's a lesson that I've learned, and therefore I no longer shame people who haven't had the same realizations as me, because over the years I continue to learn new things and change my opinions and adapt my actions accordingly. And the same thing can be said for other people. A lot of times they don't have the same perspective as you because they haven't been exposed to the same things that you have, and they haven't gone on the same thought patterns that you have. So don't judge people, don't criticize people, don't be that crazy environmentalist. Something I don't do anymore. I no longer keep a sporadic fridge where things go to rot. Over the years, I've tried to reduce my food waste down to nearly none, and even lessen the amount of things I'm composting, actually using all of the resources that went into growing our foods to actually eat them, or use them in other ways rather than just sending them to compost. So I keep a very organized fridge because I find that that actually has led to a lot less food waste, and so I no longer, I guess you could say, waste food, but I no longer keep a disaster of a fridge. I no longer consider only packaging when it comes to the sustainability of any given product. I've been talking about this a lot more on this channel, and I hope that you guys are open to it. I would love to hear in the comments right now what you think about this new move towards focusing on the entire supply chain of the sustainability of a product instead of just focusing on the packaging. Is it too much for you? Do you need to just stick to avoiding plastic, or are you ready to dive into the more nuanced gray area discussions of what sustainability actually looks like on a deep scale and not so surface level? Over the years of living more sustainably, I have learned that actually the bigger impact comes from things that we don't see in our own homes. The packaging has very little to do with the actual environmental footprint of any given thing that we purchase. So over the years, something I no longer do is look at a product as being sustainable simply because its packaging is considered to be sustainable in terms of how we've been evaluating it for the last few years. I no longer have a constantly rotating makeup routine. Again, younger Shelby, me, really was into YouTube culture, and back in the early 2010s, having a giant stash of makeup was the thing everybody wanted. And that led to what I personally call fast makeup, where people were buying things and using them a handful of times and then buying something else, which is insane to think about how much waste there was in terms of what went to landfill back then, or probably recently went to landfill because people would hold on to it for so long, but also in terms of resources. So mining for materials for makeup is not a light footprint on the planet. It's not a benign thing. It's actually really, really impactful, some of the minerals that we mine for makeup. And that's definitely something I used to partake in as even a young environmentalist, because this stuff was a lot less known back then, whereas now people are talking about it a lot more. And so something I no longer do is use a makeup palette a couple times before I move on to the next one. I pretty much repeat the same makeup look all the time from the same palette. I'll link my makeup routine up here if you want to see it. But that is a really unsustainable action and habit that I used to do that I don't do that anymore. I also no longer buy something with the intention that it is going to be returned, or even the possibility that hey, I'm gonna buy this, go home, try it on, and then I'll return it if I don't want it. After I did my fair share of dumpster diving, both in my personal life and on this YouTube channel, feel free to dive into that rabbit hole if you want. But what I realized is that most things that we're returning to stores are actually just being sent to landfill. I think this is less true when you're supporting sustainable brands. Like for instance, one of my current favorite brands is Hack With Designs. They actually have something called their Sustain Shop where they sell things that are either like maybe a little bit off, like the stitching is wrong, things that were returned, and also things that are like in limited stock they no longer are selling. But for a lot of brands, the returns that you give back are not being resold. They're not even being donated most of the time, which we need legislation for, please. Why isn't our government requiring people to not just send things to landfill when they're returned? Why isn't there more producer responsibility? But yeah, that's something that I've seen many people do, and something that younger me would have done is like, oh, I like this thing, let me take it home, put it on with this outfit, see if I like the fit of it, don't want to bother with the dressing room, etc. It's not something I would do these days because most of the time those things are ending up in the landfill. I no longer use a dryer, both in terms of my hair and in terms of my clothing. I don't dry any of my clothes in the dryer. I don't dry my hair because the air can do it for me in both senses without any extra greenhouse gases. If you're someone who has to dry your clothes in a dryer because, for instance, I have a friend who has to do that right now because her apartment complex will fine her if she's hang drying things in her backyard. Her backyard is fenced in. So the fact that they give a shit about that is so mind-blowing to me, and also very classist. Don't get me started. So if you're in a situation like that, I'm not here to shame you. And also if you have a certain hair type that like really needs to be blow dried, I'm not here to shame you. I'm just telling you those are two things that I no longer do because I don't see them as necessary. Speaking of the dryer and clothing, I also no longer wash my clothes after one wear. When I was a kid living at my parents' house, I always had to do the laundry. This is probably why I hate doing laundry now. But I always washed everything I wore after one wear, as did my parents, which is so weird to think about now because I rarely put stuff into the washing basket, or what do you call it, the laundry basket. It's more common for me to hang something back up after I wear it than it is for me to put it in the laundry basket. And that's just simply because it will make my clothes last longer by going through the wash cycle less, obviously waste less water and less energy to wash things less. I do not water or fertilize the grass in my lawn. I've talked about my lawn a little bit here on the channel, and people always tell me that I should rip it up and replace it with native plants, and trust me, I want to. We also did the same thing in our backyard where I feel like it's more acceptably seen to renters and to the next buyers of this house. Madison is very not risk averse like I am, so for me it would be like, yeah, fuck the grass, rip it up, replace it. But for her, she wants to maintain the value of the house, and honestly for most home buyers, grass is seen as the more pleasurable or desired thing. But if that grass dies because I'm not watering it, I don't give a fuck. I talk more in depth about lawns in a recent video. I'll link it up here and in the description for you if you want to learn more about why they're horrible. But in general, wasting water and fertilizers to keep your grass green, are you good? It's just not necessary either, because really our grass stays green pretty much all year. It might get a little bit brown around like September because it's so fucking hot. But like our neighbors waste water watering their lawns all the time, and their lawns are not significantly more luscious than ours. So like, why would I fertilize or water my yard? It's just wasteful in terms of the environment, but also in terms of money. Like, chill the fuck out with that. I no longer get any paper bills. I also get very few junk mail because I'm always on it when it comes through. And if there is ever an option to opt for an online receipt, I always do that. I get very few paper receipts these days. It's honestly more convenient to keep up with because of tax purposes, but obviously less wasteful in terms of like printing a paper receipt that you don't need. You can just put it in your email and be done with it. Something else I no longer do is keep my money in places that are unethical and not sustainable for the planet. I no longer keep my money in big banks, and I no longer invest in things that don't align with my values. I made a whole video recently about how you might be funding climate change and having no idea. Hint, spoiler alert, it's through keeping your money in big banks. If you want to learn more, I'll link that video up here. But that's something I no longer do. I've actually been using aspiration since probably like 2017, and utilize big banks as little as possible. Our house is mortgaged through our credit union, and so not giving my money to those things is definitely better for the planet, and just like a habit and thing that I used to do that I no longer do. This video was definitely fun. I always love to copy Emmy's ideas, but I want to give another huge thank you to Skillshare for partnering with me on this video and share a fun little course from them to you. So let's talk about that. If you're subscribed to my newsletter and you've seen my secret videos, link in the description, You know I am in big need of self-care recently, so I'm really excited to tell you about this course I actually found through Skillshare called The Ultimate Self-Care Playbook. Discover and nurture your centered self. I think this is really, really cool because self-care is different to everyone, but this is kind of a great overview. It's by Jonathan Van Ness, and since it's over on Skillshare, there are no ads you have to listen to, and you can start taking this course right now with the link in my description with 1 month free trial to Skillshare. And since Skillshare offers membership with meaning, you can connect to fellow creatives and enter a community of encouragement, communication, and inspiration. So if you're ready to start learning, make sure you check the link at the top of the description. The first 1,000 people to click my link will get a free month to Skillshare's membership.